Island accident in 1979. So, where were you when the accident occurred?
I had taken a friend of mine to Mechanicsburg, which is about 18 miles from here, to get a loan for his car. While I was sitting in a car waiting for him to get his loan, the emergency broadcast system came on. It basically said there has been an accident in 3 Mile Island. Being a Middletown resident, having a 4-year-old daughter in a daycare school that was very close to 3 Mile Island, I ran in, grabbed my buddy. We made it from there to here, which is about a 30-minute drive back then because there wasn't as big a highway. We made it here in about 15 minutes. My father-in-law at the time had enough sense, because he knew what was going on, to go get my daughter from school, take her to his store, and put her down in the basement. So my panic, because cell phones weren't there back then, till I got there and found, I went to the store and found out where she was. The first few hours of that accident were extremely scary for everybody. At that point, nobody knew a lot about nuclear energy and how it worked. We just knew that it wasn't a good thing. And of course, the news, they blew it up to make it sound worse than what it was. And at that point, I guess they had a plan to do that. I got here to town, found my daughter, got a hold of my wife to make sure she was okay so she could come home. She was in Hershey at the time. And she got home. Her father had said that there's a big problem down there. He had access to the place when it was being built, so he knew a little bit about the workings of it. So, and make a long story short, we had family that lived here, my grandparents, my mother, and we went and checked on them, told them, look, we're going to leave, because that's what we were advised to do if we could. So we had a couple of days to get everything together. Obviously, the first 3 days were extremely, I don't want to say horrifying, but people in town here did not know what was going on and how bad it really was. So in the beginning, the news had pictures on the news of people running into their cars, people packing stuff in their cars and leaving. So the panic was there. It was more created by the news, I think, than plus people not knowing what's going on. So for the first few days, it was very confusing. People weren't sure what was going on. We had to listen to the news. We tuned into the emergency broadcast systems. They were giving us news feeds. There was a gas bubble that could blow up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So everyone in town was more or less on edge, and we were told to be prepared to leave, and they'd get ready to, within a 50-mile radius. They had a map where they showed us how far we should go. They were plotting how to get everybody out of the area, because obviously that's a lot of people to evacuate in that little bit of the time. So on the third day, I believe, we had Harold Denton, who was then he was the president of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I was working at the Host Inn in Harrisburg, which is about 5 miles from here, and he stayed at our hotel. So we talked to him and cornered him in the lobby before he got on his helicopter and asked him what we should do, and he just said to make sure you had a tank of gas and be ready to evacuate and give it the order. But he did say, we're working on it, we think we can contain it. So eased everybody's mind a little bit, and he also was on the news and said the exact same thing to the people in this area. The next day, Jimmy Carter, who was then President of the United States, came down to Middletown at the MCSO building. He held a news conference outside the MCSO building, which is like a multi-building that everybody used for things in Middletown. He explained what was going on and tried to tell people to remain calm. So at that point, everybody kind of like breathed a little easier when he said that they're got it under control. And it was, I don't want to say scary, it was just not knowing what was going to happen. And people in town, basically at that point, it became, okay, now what happens to our property values, things like that. We had just bought a new home not far from TMI. So basically it's like, oh my gosh, what do we do? At that point, we were worried about my daughter, and if something really did happen. So my wife and I had a friend that I worked with that lived about 35 miles from here in a town called Llewellyn. He had a farm. So we decided to pack stuff up and went and moved in with him for about a week until we knew that everything was going to be okay. Basically, what it all boiled down to is the panic was created because no one really knew. It was a new entity, nuclear. There was something brand new, and they really didn't know a lot about it. I mean, they knew, but they didn't know. The people didn't know what was really going to happen. And I think that living here and being so close to it, the things that went through your mind are, one, is it going to be harmful in the future? Two, are we going to lose our property, our homes, and everything like that? Three, how long are we going to be gone from our town? So, you know, the worst case scenario is something like Chernobyl that happened. One thing in the United States, the safety, they put a dome over the reactor, and that's what saved us out there. I, as a father, a husband, a homeowner, the things that went through your mind are the safety of your family first, you know, next, the safety of your home, your family that lives here in town. Like I said, to say we were worried, yes, we were very worried. We had all our friends, we were. To say that we panicked, I don't think anybody panicked after the first day because people, the power that be, the authorities kind of like calmed everybody down. You saw pictures on the news of people running to their cars and all that kind of stuff. So I think that it was a horrible thing to live through, but it was an experience like anything else that people live through, a tragic event or an event like that. But the people that live here now, like myself and the people that lived through that, they more or less are, they came up with all kinds of things like you could have cancer, They issued, they came around at homes and they were issuing iodine pills that you could take. And that's supposedly to help with the radiation in your body. After a while out later, they came around and they went to every home and they did a survey to ask if you used microwave ovens, if you were ever exposed to X-rays and all that. The aftermath of it, they came around to make sure that they knew exactly what was going to happen down the road. So we had to go through all those things. And that was pretty much, now it's been so many years since that happened. They basically had, they put together a kind of like a synopsis of all the people that lived here, how many people died of cancer, how many people had these issues. We had people saying that they had vegetables, they grew vegetables near their farms, and they were showing these, you know how if you see a carrot that's, like got 3 things on it, or you see a potato that's got an extra potato growing on it. Those people were putting their things on in the Patriot, in the Press and Journal about these weird looking vegetables, blaming it on TMI. People would catch fish that would have an extra gill or an extra eye, saying that was a cause. But what it all boiled down to is the radiation that we received from that entire event was less than what you get from an X-ray. So once we learned all that, the fears have been allayed. The town has grown now. We have an airport here, etc. And anybody that lived through that, they can sit there and it was in a way traumatic for people. In another way, it's like, okay, well, you live through that, you can live through anything. So that's pretty much how it went. The town now, like I said, is kind of like back to normal. And we don't, we talk about it every now and then. And the fact that the island is now shut down, there are cleaning crews in there. They're almost done removing all the fuel rods. It'll never be anything but that TMI for a long time. But people just go by it. It's like, if you fly over it, in the beginning when you used to fly over the island, the pilot would come on and say that's the famous TMI. And I think that's what Middletown became known as, you know. Well, that's where the TMI accident was. Now you say that to children your age and younger, that they have no clue what it is. So, any other questions?
In town during the accident, what did you see as government vehicles or?
We had National Guard here. We had Harold Denton, of course, he was a big shot. The news people were like news people. They were like everywhere. There's probably more of them than there were National Guards people at the time. The town basically was, everybody was prepared. People didn't go outside. If you went down through the streets, it was like a ghost town, basically. They told us to stay inside, keep the windows up. And it was March, it was early spring. Well, it was getting late March, I think it was the 28th of March. So the days were getting longer and warmer, and people wanted to go outside, but we were told to stay inside. So you only reacted to people when you could talk to them on the phone, or if you did go out, they told you to stay in your car, keep your windows rolled up. And obviously TMI was sealed off. They had National Guards people on 441, which is the route that went to TMI. They had it blocked off in both directions where you couldn't get near it. The people that lived, like myself, that didn't live far from it, a lot of them left, and it was only because they had children and they were just as concerned as I was about their children. So there wasn't, if you could, if you imagine like during COVID, a lot of businesses shut down. Most of the businesses in town shut down to avoid, they didn't want people going out. A lot of people lost their business because of that, which was a shame. But the town as a whole was nervous, but no one really panicked. There were a few people that panicked in the beginning that ran away as fast as they could. But as a whole, this used to be a military base at this airport that we're at right now during the Cold War. So we were used to jets flying over. We were used to, when they had their drills, we were used to the alarms going off. So it wasn't as, it's not as if we weren't used to a crisis sometimes or thought there was a crisis. So with the average person in town, when we would talk, it would basically be what's going on, what do you know? And of course there's always this information given out anytime there's a bad event. So between everybody, we tried to calm ourselves down. And I believe that's why at the time Jimmy Carter, the president, came to town and had a speech, and he actually went down and visited the plant. And that one act kind of allayed the fear of everybody that, hey, if he can go down there, it's going to be okay. So at that point, it took about a week to everybody to kind of like breathe a little bit. And then you started seeing people slowly going out. Not as much, but people were going out. And okay, they're going to be okay. And then they would tell us when they were going to release the steam that was in the dome. And they do it on certain days. They figured out which way the wind was blowing. So if you really think about it, most of the time the wind was going downriver. So places like Goldsburg and New York, those places in Royalton, they were closer than Middletown was to it. But the wind kind of like blew it away. Not as bad as Chernobyl, because that was bad. The whole world got some radiation from that.
So, were you nervous?
Yes,
Yeah.
sure. I had a family, and I had a 4-year-old daughter, who, by the way, is now grown up with her own children, and everything. So she has no ill effects from it. None of us, I have no ill effects from it. My wife has no ill effects from it. So, yeah, nervous. Like I said, I made it from Mechanicsburg to Middletown, and it's usually a half-hour drive. I made it in 15 minutes. I broke every speed limit you can think of.
Um, so after the accident, did TMI put out any extra safety precautions?
Yes, they built within, I think, 50-mile radius. They put sirens in, emergency sirens. They also had a number that you could call on the phone. Back then, there was no 911 at that point, but they had an emergency number you could call to find out what's going on. They ran that 24/7. They actually had, and I don't know if there's, I know that they tore them down a while back, but they had these huge sirens all through the area here. And they would test them probably like once a month, but they would alert everybody that they were testing them so nobody panicked. And they also, like I said, throughout the years, they were constantly uh, sending you notices. They had health professionals coming around and asking about your lifestyle, if you've been exposed to x-rays and all that. So they did an extremely good job, I believe, in checking out everything. So to make sure that, okay, the ill effects aren't, because people were saying every time somebody got cancer, it was because of 3 Mile Island. And it's not necessarily so. I've worked with microwaves as a chef all my life. Everybody's exposed. I've had x-rays. I've broken all kinds of bones in my body. Back then, they took x-rays. They didn't have MRI. So I'm fine with that. And I know a few people that have had cancer and things like that, but no one sits there and says it's all TMI's fault.
Yeah. So I've noticed through your stories that TMI has had way bigger safety precautions than other plants.
The those plants now would be safer than coal-fired plants, gas-fired plants, oil. They're better for the environment as far as now. It was an accident. It was basically somewhat human and somewhat mechanical issues. At the time, I believe that they didn't understand the readings that they were getting, and they thought they did the right thing, and until somebody figured it out, it was like they didn't know they had all that steam down there. So it's safe now. If they would keep doing it, it'd be a lot safer, but unfortunately, it's like anything else, it got a bad name. And it's now everybody wants to use solar, which is a great thing too. But if they build another one, I think it would be 100% safer. They've done an excellent job cleaning up the plant. We have people that come in here and stay at the hotel that are cleaning that plant up. And it's a shame that the island can't ever be used again, because before they started building, they used to have cabins. People would go over to the island in the summertime and fish and do things like that. So that's the only thing is it's going to be there forever, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. And there's plants near us. I think I told you about today.
Yes.
We still have those sirens and the plants from the 60s.
Yep.
And we still have the old ones. TMI got an upgrade.
Yep.
They're gone now because so is the plant.
There's another nuclear plant less than about 20 some miles from here. And I can't remember the name of it, but it's still in operation. But like anything, they wear out and they become kind of useless. You can't do it anymore. So, and I can't remember the name of that, what they call that nuclear power plant, but I had my granddaughter, her husband was painting it not too long ago.
Oh.
They had people down there to paint it. But it's called York something or other. I'm not sure the name of it. But it had no problems, and obviously they upgraded that system when this happened to make sure it didn't happen again. So
that plant is either peach bottom or lime brick.
peach bottom, that's
okay,
it.
Yeah,
Yes,
bottom.
you knew. Good job.
Yep. So, were you annoyed about the outcomes after you found out what happened?
I would say the inconvenience of it was not so much annoying because I went with a friend, my wife, we went to a farm, my daughter just loved the animals. We had a great time, we would cook out and do things together. The annoyment came from what's going to happen to property values, obviously being a homeowner. It wasn't so much that I was annoyed, a lot of people were because of the inconvenience, but I would say I was more or less concerned about the long-term effects. Obviously, but I'm basically healthy for my age. My wife is very healthy. My daughter's extremely healthy. Her kids are healthy. My grandkids are fine. We all lived in this area basically at the time. So the annoyment was just because of the inconvenience at the time. Once we found out we were going to be okay, I believe that since the accident they've done nothing but be upfront about what's going on so that if anything major would happen, we were the first ones to know about it. And I don't think they've tried to hide anything. So, like I said, my biggest thing was the anxiety because of the property value, what's going to happen to this whole area now that we have that big, huge nuclear power plant down here that's basically full of radiation. So there's always that, and now that years have passed and we're okay, and it's basically almost cleaned up. I think we're okay, dude. I think everybody's over it.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much all I have for you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for doing this.
If you think of anything, let me know. Okay, you got my number. I have your number now. I promise you that I will look through my photographs. I think I actually have a t-shirt. They made t-shirts. One of the t-shirts they had out was "Hell No, We Don't Glow."
Yeah,
Middletown, PA. They had another one that we survived. There was a flood in 1972, which devastated everything.
Yeah.
There was a flood. It was called "We Survived Agnes," which was the name of the flood. We survived TMI, and we survived. I can't remember what the other one said, but they had the T-shirts out about all that stuff. It was kind of amazing that people made money off of it as well.
Yeah.
So, and also fun of it. Like it was okay. We survived, and people were always saying we don't want to go to Middletown because of the radiation.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that people that had businesses. My father-in-law at the time had a hardware store right here in town. He was extremely worried about what would happen to our business. There was a huge nursery right across the street from TMI at the time. They were probably the biggest nursery around here. Unfortunately, they lost their business because of that. But the homes down there, the property values are back to where they should be. I think there's people are over it now.
Yeah.
So I'm excited that you're doing this. I think that it's something that people should know about. It's like any part of history, so that they can understand it and understand that, hey, it was extremely trying time, and all that.
I actually have one more question
Sure.
for you. This was after the accident.
Okay.
It might have been 1 or 2 years later. I forgot. As you know, probably Bechtel did the cleanup. Were you nervous at all when they said they were going to use the polar crane?
Well, we were. I'm trying to say how you. It was. People were concerned.
Yeah.
Because now they're going to open up like a can of worms. They did their best to allay any issues we might have had about them doing it. They were very upfront with it. I think the biggest concern was they're starting all over again. You know, oh my God, it's oh, here we have to go again. So it was like you watched the news back then, and every little thing that went on, if something happened, you know, if you saw like people rushing to the plant, things like that. They did have National Guard there, you know, covering the entrances and blocking the entrances, which was kind of scary because you had people with guns, you know, and all that.
Yeah.
But they did an extremely good job. Years after with that, you know, they built the siren systems, and then of course, you know, they really never let, you know, their guard down after that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm way over it now.
Yeah.
But I love this town. It's a beautiful town.
So do I.
The people that are in it that are still around, I do have a lot of friends that are still live in town and things like that. It's like if we get together and we'll be talking about what you do that day and where were you and what happened and you know, who was crying, who was screaming, who was worried. And you saw the cars flying out of town, the highways were clogged. And then when you look at it, you kind of laugh about it. It's like, oh my God, that was us, you know. So, but it was, you learn, like everything. So, and the best thing people can do nowadays is just know your surroundings and know what you're up to, and by all means, just, you know, I know the news sometimes gets a bad rep, but everybody in life should be aware and be prepared for anything, and that's the best thing. I scuba dive, and one thing they teach you when you scuba dive is you don't panic. You sit there and you assess your situation, and you learn a lot throughout the years. And whatever crisis you're in, the next time you have that crisis, you're ready to go, and you understand it, and you can help other people. And that's what I think a lot of people that were here, once they calmed down, they started to help each other. You know, people would bring their people food if they didn't want to go out, the older people and things like that. They transported, we have an old folks home here in town, they transported all the people to new homes. So we started taking the precautions that were done, but now we have a plan in case that happens. So we're good for it.
Well, that's pretty much everything I have. Thank you very much for your time.
Great job, my friend.